It was a bright and warm afternoon, the kind of day when the sun smiles gently over the neighborhood, making everything seem calm and alive. Children were laughing and running through the park, their voices carrying over the grass like little bursts of joy. Families had come out to enjoy the day. Some sat on picnic blankets, sharing sandwiches and juice, while others pushed strollers or played catch with their younger children. The air smelled faintly of flowers and freshly cut grass, the usual sense of a suburban park. Among the children, a young black schoolboy was running around with a group of friends. He was tall for his age, but still had that youthful energy and excitement that made him hard to keep up with. Today they had decided to play basketball near the small court at the edge of the park. The boy bounced the ball expertly, dribbling between his friends, laughing when someone tried to steal it from him. Every move was natural, every laugh genuine. He was just another child enjoying his day. Nearby, a woman in her 40s sat on a bench watching the park with a certain intensity. She had her arms crossed and her eyes fixed on the group of children. At first, she seemed like just another parent keeping an eye on the playground. But soon it became clear that her attention was different. She was not simply observing, she was scrutinizing. Her frown deepened as she followed the boy's every move. She muttered to herself occasionally, shaking her head, her voice low but sharp with disapproval. To her, nothing seemed innocent. Every laugh and shout seemed suspicious. The woman's suspicion grew as she watched the boy and his friends play. She noticed how he bounced the ball and ran across the court. In her mind, she imagined chaos, danger, and trouble, though in reality nothing of the sort was happening. The boy called out to his friends, encouraging them, and when someone scored, he clapped his hands and laughed. For the other parents nearby, this was just normal play, normal laughter, normal childhood. But for this woman, it was a sign of misbehavior or worse. She reached for her phone with a shaky hand, dialing the police without hesitation. Her fingers trembled not out of fear for herself, but out of certainty that she was right. The boy continued to play, unaware of the judgmental eyes following him. He passed the ball, ran to the hoop, and made a basket with a proud smile. His friends cheered, running over to congratulate him. It was a simple, happy moment, the kind of small victory that makes children beam with pride. He didn't notice the woman standing and speaking into her phone, her words low but insistent, explaining how a boy was causing trouble, how she feared for the safety of the park. Her story was exaggerated, each word designed to make the situation seem more serious than it was. As she spoke, a few nearby parents noticed her actions. Some frowned, puzzled by the scene unfolding before them. One mother called out softly, asking if everything was okay, but the woman waved her off, clearly in her own world, convinced of the boy's guilt. Children nearby slowed down, sensing the tension without understanding it, their play interrupted by the sudden seriousness of an adult's concern. The boy paused mid-dribble, looking around at the sudden quiet and noticing the woman's agitated stance. Confused, he stopped bouncing the ball and frowned, unsure why he felt a weight in the air. Minutes later, the distant sound of sirens began to echo through the park. It was faint at first, but then grew louder, signaling the approach of police officers. The boy's friends froze, unsure what was happening, their laughter gone. Parents began to murmur, asking each other if they knew what was going on. The woman, now visibly anxious, gestured to the approaching officers, pointing at the boy and repeating her story in hurried, sharp tones. She wanted them to understand the danger she believed was present, but her narrative was full of assumptions and fear, not truth. The officers arrived and stepped out of their patrol cars with calm authority. They surveyed the scene carefully, noting the group of children playing, the adult standing nearby, and the woman speaking rapidly. They approached the boy, asking questions in a firm but gentle voice. The boy, innocent and slightly scared, tried to explain what he was doing, how he was simply playing basketball with friends. His voice was steady despite the nerves, honest and clear. But the woman's interruption made it harder for them to immediately understand the truth. Nearby, some parents tried to explain to the officers that nothing was wrong, that the boy had done nothing to harm anyone. Their voices were polite but concerned, their eyes darting between the woman and the officers. The officers listened carefully, taking in each perspective, weighing the evidence before making any decision. The boy's confusion grew as he saw adults speaking, phones out and sirens blaring. It was a moment of fear, a moment when a simple day of play had turned into something tense and uncertain. As the officers spoke with the woman, A new figure appeared at the edge of the park. She walked with purpose, her posture upright and confident, her gaze sweeping the area. The boy spotted her immediately and ran toward her, relief washing over his face. This was his mother. She knelt down, hugged him tightly, and asked if he was okay. Her voice was calm and reassuring, filled with love and concern. The boy explained quickly, words tumbling out in a mix of confusion and fear, trying to tell her everything that had happened. The mother's attention shifted to the woman who had called the police. She listened to the story, her eyes narrowing slightly, but her voice remained composed. She spoke to the officers, clarifying that her son had been playing and that there had been no wrongdoing. The officers nodded, taking note of her explanation and her calm authority. The woman who had made the call suddenly felt a shift in the atmosphere. The confidence she had felt moments before was now replaced with uncertainty. She realized that the situation was not as she had imagined, and that her actions had targeted an innocent child. The other parents watched silently, some shaking their heads in disapproval, others relieved that the boy was safe. The tension in the air slowly began to ease, though the memory of the incident lingered. The boy stayed close to his mother, feeling protected and reassured. He understood that the world sometimes judged quickly and unfairly, and that even in the midst of fear, there were people who could stand up and make things right. The woman who had called the police fumbled with her words, unsure how to respond to the mother's composed and authoritative presence. Her story no longer carried the weight it had moments ago. She could see the officer's attention shift, the parents' disapproval and the boy's calmness beside his mother. For the first time, she realized that her fear and prejudice had led her to act wrongly. The scene slowly returned to normal. Children resumed playing, their laughter returning like small ripples across the park. The boy continued to dribble the basketball, this time under the watchful but comforting gaze of his mother. Parents exchanged knowing looks, silently acknowledging the importance of standing together and protecting innocence. The woman remained seated, quiet now, reflecting on her actions as she watched the boy move freely again. It had been a moment of tension and misunderstanding, but it also became a moment of learning. The park returned to its peaceful state, with sunlight filtering through the trees and children running freely. The boy felt the warmth of safety and love, holding on to the reassurance that someone who cared for him had intervened, and the woman, realizing the truth, could only sit quietly, contemplating how quickly fear and prejudice could distort reality, and how easily it could have been avoided. The day went on, the park alive with sounds of play and laughter. The boy remained close to his mother, enjoying the rest of the afternoon, aware now of the strength that came from the presence of someone who cared deeply. It was a day that would be remembered, not for the tension or the misunderstanding, but for the protection, love, and quiet lessons learned in the heart of a sunny park. The afternoon sun shone brightly, but a tension lingered in the air after the earlier incident. The young boy stayed close to his mother, clinging to her hand as they slowly walked across the park. Even though the officers had accepted her explanation, the boy could still feel the unease from the woman who had called the police. Her eyes followed them constantly, her lips pressed together, and every movement she made seemed heavy with shame and embarrassment. She had not expected to meet the boy's mother, and certainly not someone with such quiet authority and presence. The mother noticed the wary glances her son cast toward the woman. She crouched down, smiling gently, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "It's okay," she said softly. "Everything is all right now. You don't have to worry about her." The boy nodded, feeling a sense of relief, but he still didn't fully understand why the woman had acted that way. He simply knew that his mother had the power to make things feel safe again, and that was enough for him in that moment. Nearby parents and bystanders watched with quiet curiosity. Some whispered to each other, astonished that a simple misunderstanding had escalated so quickly. Others shook their heads in disapproval, clearly frustrated at the woman's rush to judgment. Even the children, though young, sensed that something serious had happened and watched from a distance. Their games temporarily paused as they tried to understand the adult world around them. The woman who had called the police shifted uneasily on the bench. Her hand fidgeted with her purse strap as she stared at the mother and child. She had imagined herself as right and vigilant, the protector of the park, but now she felt exposed and vulnerable. She could sense the eyes of others on her, feeling the judgment and disbelief in their stares. It was a feeling she was not used to, one that made her uncomfortable and uncertain. The mother, noticing the discomfort, took a calm, measured step toward the woman. Her voice was steady but kind, carrying a strength that drew attention without shouting. "I understand that you are concerned," she said. "But my son was only playing. He did nothing wrong. It's important to be careful about making assumptions about children, especially when it comes to race." Her words were firm but not angry, and the tone made it clear that she expected honesty and reflection. The woman's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to form a reply, but the words felt heavy on her tongue. She had expected confrontation, but not calm authority. She had expected fear or guilt from the boy, but instead saw a child protected by someone who could command attention and respect simply by standing there. Her voice trembled slightly as she finally muttered something about being scared and wanting to do the right thing. The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. The boy, still holding his mother's hand, watched the exchange with wide eyes. He felt a mix of relief and confusion. Relief that his mother had intervened, that she had made sure he was safe and no one could hurt him. Confusion because he didn't fully understand why someone would act so negatively toward him in the first place. His mother smiled at him and squeezed his hand, silently telling him that he had nothing to worry about and that the situation was now in her hands. The police officers standing nearby observed quietly. They had arrived expecting a potentially tense confrontation, but found themselves in the middle of a lesson about understanding and fairness. They exchanged glances with each other, nodding in subtle acknowledgement of the mother's authority and composure. One officer stepped forward to gently reassure the woman, explaining that while concern is understandable, it is important to make sure facts are correct before escalating situations unnecessarily. A small crowd of parents and park-goers had gathered at a distance, watching the interaction unfold. Some of them whispered to their neighbors, commenting on how quickly assumptions could turn harmless situations into stressful events. Others nodded appreciatively at the mother, impressed by how calmly she had handled what could have become a chaotic situation. The boy's mother was not loud or aggressive, but the quiet confidence and calm fairness in her demeanor made a stronger impression than any angry words could have. The woman on the bench finally sat back, her posture tense and stiff. She looked around at the faces of other parents, many of whom were giving her looks of disapproval. She felt isolated, exposed, and aware that her actions had consequences. The initial rush of certainty she had felt was replaced by unease, a gnawing feeling that she had acted out of bias rather than reason. She realized, perhaps for the first time, how damaging assumptions can be when they are based on fear or prejudice. The mother knelt down to her son, brushing some dirt off his knees and straightening his shirt. "See, everything is fine now," she whispered. "It's okay to be upset, but you don't need to carry fear with you. People sometimes make mistakes, but we can handle them together." The boy nodded, feeling a deep sense of security. In that moment, he understood something important. Courage and kindness were not always loud or forceful. Sometimes the quiet strength of someone who cared for you was enough to turn fear into calm. Nearby, the woman who had called the police tried to collect herself. She muttered an apology, though it sounded forced even to her own ears. The mother accepted it calmly, acknowledging the words without giving in to anger or resentment. She understood that teaching and guidance were more effective than scolding, and she wanted the woman to leave the park with a lesson, not just guilt. It was a delicate balance, one that the mother handled with care and confidence. As the boy and his mother began to walk again, the mother glanced around at the park. Children had slowly resumed their games, laughter returning to the air like a gentle breeze. Parents resumed their conversations, though some still cast wary eyes at the woman on the bench. The mother noticed the subtle tension lingering in the air and took her son's hand more firmly, a silent promise to protect him and guide him through moments like this. The woman remained on the bench, her thoughts churning. She replayed the event over and over in her mind, realizing that she had let fear and prejudice cloud her judgment. She could see now that the boy had done nothing wrong, that the mother's presence and calm authority had revealed the truth instantly. It was a moment of realization, uncomfortable but necessary. She felt a mix of shame, embarrassment, and a newfound awareness of how easily assumptions can lead to harm. The mother, noticing the boy looking at the woman, bent down and whispered something in his ear. He smiled faintly, understanding that some people might act wrongly but that he was safe and loved. The lesson was subtle but important. Not everyone will see you clearly. Not everyone will act fairly, but the love and guidance of someone who cares can make a world of difference. It was a lesson the boy would carry with him, one that would shape the way he viewed the world and the people in it. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass. The park was alive with the sound of children's laughter, parents chatting, and the occasional bark of a dog. The boy and his mother continued to walk slowly, enjoying the remainder of the afternoon. The woman on the bench finally stood and walked away, her head slightly bowed, still processing the events of the day.
She had been confronted not with anger, but with truth and calm authority.
And that confrontation left a mark she would not soon forget. The boy felt the warmth of his mother's hand, the strength in her voice, and the safety of her presence. He had learned that day that courage could be quiet, that mistakes could be corrected, and that love could protect even in moments of misunderstanding. The mother walking beside him felt a quiet satisfaction. She had turned a tense situation into a moment of teaching and protection. She had shown that calm authority and kindness could diffuse fear and confront prejudice without confrontation. The day slowly came to an end, but the lessons lingered in the hearts of those who had witnessed the scene. Children returned to their games, parents returned to their conversations, and the park seemed to breathe again, filled with life, laughter, and the gentle reassurance that even in moments of tension, understanding and fairness could prevail. The boy and his mother left the park together, walking hand in hand, carrying with them the quiet power of courage, love, and the knowledge that no matter what others think, their bond and integrity could guide them through anything. The day had moved on, but the tension from the earlier incident still lingered in the park. The young boy stayed close to his mother, feeling a mix of relief and lingering confusion. He could sense that something had changed in the air, that people were watching differently now. Some glances were curious, others cautious, but all seemed to recognize the shift that had occurred. The mother had handled the situation with quiet authority, and it had left an impression on everyone nearby. The woman who had called the police was sitting on a bench, looking uneasy. She had expected a quick response, a scenario where she was clearly right, and the authorities would agree with her concerns. Instead, she had met calm authority, wisdom, and composure, and it had shaken her. The mother of the boy had not yelled, had not demanded punishment, but her presence alone had changed the course of the day. Now the woman found herself reflecting on her own actions, realizing that fear and bias had clouded her judgment. The mother knelt down beside her son, brushing off dust from his clothes. "Are you okay now?" she asked softly. The boy nodded, still gripping her hand tightly. His eyes were wide, filled with questions he didn't know how to ask. "Why did she think I was in trouble?" he finally asked. The mother smiled gently, holding his face between her hands. "Sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes they let fear guide their decisions. That's why it's important to stay calm, be truthful, and trust the people who care for you. You did nothing wrong, and you are safe now. That's what matters." The woman on the bench shifted in her seat, watching this interaction. She could see the care and attention the mother gave her child, the steady reassurance, the love that could quiet a child's fears. The contrast between her own anxious, judgmental behavior and the calm, protective presence of the mother was stark. She realized that she had not only misjudged the boy, but she had also misunderstood the situation entirely. The boy had been playing, innocent and carefree, while her fear had made it seem threatening. The mother stood up, keeping her hand lightly on her son's shoulder. She walked slowly toward the woman, her steps measured and confident. The crowd of parents and bystanders watched silently, sensing that something important was about to happen. There was no anger in her movements, no harsh words. Her approach was calm, deliberate, and commanding respect. She stopped a few feet from the woman and looked her in the eyes. "I understand, and that you were concerned," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But my son was only playing. He is a child just like any other. It's important to be careful about the assumptions we make. Fear should not cloud our judgment, and we must always check the facts before taking action." The woman stammered, trying to find words to respond, but nothing came out smoothly. She had expected confrontation, maybe even fear, but not this quiet authority. The mother's calm demeanor highlighted her own lack of composure. She looked around, realizing that the other parents and bystanders were watching her closely, noticing the contrast between her anxiety and the mother's control. The weight of her mistake began to settle heavily on her shoulders. The boy watched from behind his mother, feeling both nervous and reassured. He sensed that the situation had shifted completely, that his mother's words and presence had made a difference not only for him, but for the woman as well. He didn't fully understand the complexities of prejudice or assumptions, but he understood the comfort of being safe, the power of someone who believed in you, and the importance of calm in difficult moments. The mother continued, speaking with a tone that was firm yet compassionate. We all make mistakes, and we all have moments where fear guides us instead of reason. The important thing is to learn from those mistakes and act with understanding and fairness. Children are vulnerable and deserve to be treated with care and patience. Today could have been very different if we had not approached this calmly. Her words were not just for the woman. They were a lesson for everyone watching, a reminder that fairness, calm, and empathy could prevent harm and confusion. The woman on the bench finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I just wanted to make sure no one was hurt, she said. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Her words faltered as the mother nodded, listening patiently. I understand that, the mother replied. It's good to be concerned, but concern should not lead to assumptions. You have to see the whole picture before deciding that someone is in the wrong. That's what fairness is about. That's what protects children and helps communities stay safe. The woman's shoulders sagged, the tension in her body slowly easing as she absorbed the words. The police officers, who had been watching quietly, now stepped forward slightly. They nodded at the woman, acknowledging that her concern, though misdirected, was understandable. They also nodded toward the mother, recognizing her role in clarifying the situation and calming everyone involved. The scene, once tense and charged with fear, began to shift toward understanding. People in the crowd whispered quietly, discussing what they had seen, and many nodded in agreement with the mother's words. The mother turned back to her son, brushing a strand of hair from his face. It's okay now, she said softly. You can go back and play and remember that you are strong and you are loved. You did nothing wrong. This is just a lesson for others, not for you. The boy's lips curled into a small, grateful smile, and he felt the warmth of reassurance and protection that only a parent could give. He looked at the other children and slowly began to run back to them, his confidence returning with each step, knowing that he had someone who would always stand by him. The woman on the bench remained seated for a while longer, processing everything. She watched the boy play, the laughter returning to the park, and felt a mix of embarrassment and realization. She had acted out of fear, assumptions, and prejudice, but now she saw the importance of patience, observation, and understanding. The mother's calm authority had revealed the truth, diffused tension, and taught a lesson in empathy without harsh words or confrontation. The woman realized that this was something she needed to remember, a lesson in humility and fairness. As the sun began to dip lower, casting soft shadows across the grass, the mother stayed close to her son, ensuring he was safe and comfortable. The boy ran toward a group of friends again, his energy returning, his laughter ringing out clearly. The mother watched him for a moment, a faint smile on her lips, feeling pride and satisfaction. She had turned a tense, potentially harmful situation into an opportunity for understanding, teaching both her son and those around her about courage, fairness, and patience. The woman on the bench finally stood up, her movements slow and deliberate. She adjusted her bag and looked around at the parents and children who had witnessed the event. She felt a quiet recognition of her mistake, a realization that assumptions and prejudice could have serious consequences. She walked away from the park, her steps thoughtful, reflecting on what she had seen and heard. It was a moment of self-reflection that would stay with her, shaping how she approached situations in the future. The mother, feeling that the day's tension had eased completely, took her son's hand and began to walk toward the park's exit. Children ran past them, laughter echoing. Parents continued their conversations, and the atmosphere returned to a sense of calm and normalcy. The boy's small hand held hers tightly, a silent affirmation that he was safe and loved, that his mother had protected him, and that the world could be navigated with courage and trust. The incident, though brief, had left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The boy learned that he could be safe even in moments of misunderstanding, that his mother's love and guidance could shield him from fear. The mother demonstrated that calm authority, empathy, and clear communication could resolve conflict without aggression. The woman who had called the police learned a lesson in humility, understanding, and the dangers of letting fear and bias dictate actions. and the community, quietly observing, witnessed a real-life example of how fairness and compassion could overcome fear and prejudice. As the sun continued its descent, the mother and her son left the park together, walking hand in hand, surrounded by the soft sounds of children playing and birds singing. The boy looked up at his mother, a sense of reassurance in his eyes. He had learned that day that mistakes could happen, but that love, courage, and understanding could guide him through them. The mother, proud yet calm, felt satisfied knowing she had turned a potentially upsetting event into a lesson in humanity, teaching her son and everyone who watched that fairness, patience, and compassion are powerful tools that can change the course of a day, and sometimes even a life. The afternoon sun was starting to soften, giving the park a warm glow as the day progressed. The young boy ran across the grass toward his friends, his laughter mingling with theirs, carefree once more. His mother followed at a slower pace, her eyes scanning the park, ensuring he was safe. The previous tension still lingered in the air, though now it was softer, like a whisper of something that had happened but would soon fade into memory. Even so, the echoes of the earlier incident had begun to ripple outward, reaching other parents and community members who had witnessed it. Nearby, the woman who had called the police remained seated on the bench for a while longer, her posture stiff with discomfort. She had replayed the events over and over in her mind, each time realizing more clearly how her assumptions had caused unnecessary fear and embarrassment. She had acted out of bias, fear, and snap judgment, and now she could see the consequences. Her phone sat idle in her hand, the call already made, the moment already passed. She felt a heaviness, a weight that she had never expected to feel so intensely. The quiet power of calm, thoughtful authority had made her actions seem small and misguided. The mother watched her son play, his energy returning in full force. She knew that the day had taught him something valuable, even if he did not fully understand it yet. She had shown him that courage could be quiet, that authority did not need to be loud, and that love and care could protect him in ways that fear and anger never could. As he dribbled the basketball, weaving between his friends, she felt proud of his resilience. He had faced confusion, misunderstanding, and fear, yet he continued to be himself, free and spirited. Word of the incident had begun to spread slowly among the park visitors. Parents who had been observing whispered to one another, recounting what they had seen. Many expressed admiration for the mother's calm approach, noting how she had handled the situation with dignity and composure. Others shook their heads at the woman who had made the call, understanding the lesson she had received firsthand. Fear and bias could cloud judgment and harm innocent people. The whispers grew, the story of the afternoon traveling beyond the park, leaving impressions on those who heard it. The woman on the bench finally stood, adjusting her bag and straightening her posture. She had thought she was acting responsibly, but now she realized how far she had strayed from reason. The presence of the mother had shown her the difference between assumption and truth, between fear and understanding. She felt small in the shadow of such quiet authority, but she also felt the stirrings of reflection, the beginning of understanding. It was uncomfortable but necessary. She began to walk slowly toward the park exit, thinking about what she had done, how she could prevent this from happening again, and how she might confront her own prejudices in the future. The mother, noticing the woman's departure, felt a mixture of relief and hope. Relief that the situation had been diffused without escalation, and hope that the woman might learn from the experience. She knew that change often began with awareness, and this moment of reflection could be a step toward understanding and empathy. She returned her attention to her son, who had scored another basket and was celebrating with his friends. The sound of his laughter, light and unburdened, was a reminder of what truly mattered: children being allowed to enjoy their childhood without fear or judgment. Parents and bystanders began to approach the mother quietly, asking questions about how she had handled the situation so calmly. Some expressed gratitude for her example, sharing that they had felt unsure of how to act if they had been in her position. The mother spoke softly but clearly, explaining that calmness, truth, and empathy were the most important tools in resolving conflict. She emphasized that assumptions could be dangerous, especially when they were based on appearances or bias. The crowd listened, absorbing her words, many nodding in agreement. The park had become a place of learning, not just for the children but for the adults as well. The boy's mother continued to watch him play, occasionally offering gentle guidance or reassurance. She noticed the subtle ways in which other children and parents were observing, learning from the events that had unfolded. It became clear that even small incidents could have a larger impact when handled thoughtfully. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had turned a potentially upsetting situation into a teaching moment, not only for her son but for the broader community. As the evening approached, the boy returned to his mother's side, slightly tired but happy. She knelt down to his level, brushing the sweat from his forehead and smiling warmly. "Did you enjoy playing again?" she asked. He nodded enthusiastically, his eyes bright. "I did, and I know I'm safe now," he said. A small but confident statement that carried more meaning than he might have realized. The mother smiled, understanding that he had internalized the lesson of the day, that even when misunderstandings occur, safety, love, and calm authority could guide him through. The woman who had made the call continued walking toward the park exit, her mind heavy with thought. She reflected on the calm way the mother had spoken, the quiet strength she had demonstrated, and the way she had protected her son without confrontation. It was a humbling experience and one that she would not forget. She realized that fear and bias could easily lead to mistakes, and that the best approach to any situation involved observation, understanding, and patience. The police officers had started to leave as well, satisfied that the situation was fully under control and that no one had been harmed. They exchanged glances with the mother, acknowledging her role in resolving the conflict. They had witnessed firsthand the power of calm authority and the importance of approaching situations with fairness and understanding. The day had been a reminder that community safety was not only about intervention, but also about guidance, teaching, and ensuring that all parties were treated with dignity. The boy's mother took his hand and began to walk toward the park exit. He looked around, noticing the park returning to its normal rhythm. Children played freely, laughter echoing through the air, parents chatted, and the occasional dog barked in the distance. It was a peaceful, ordinary scene, but now it carried a deeper meaning. The boy had learned about courage, resilience, and trust. The mother had demonstrated empathy, calmness, and authority. And the woman who had called the police had begun to understand the impact of her actions and the importance of reflection and growth. As they approached the park exit, the mother paused to look back. The sun was lower now, casting golden light over the trees and playgrounds. She watched the boy run a little ahead with a friend, his laughter blending with the sounds of the evening. It was a small moment, yet it symbolized so much: resilience, understanding, and the quiet power of compassion. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had guided her child through an unsettling moment with wisdom and care. The woman who had called the police had disappeared from view, leaving the park slowly returning to normal. The lesson she had been given would linger, a reminder of the consequences of acting from fear rather than understanding. The community had witnessed an example of calm authority and fairness, one that would likely influence the way they approached similar situations in the future. The mother held her son's hand as they continued walking home. He was quiet now, reflecting on the events of the day in his own way. She felt the warmth of his small hand and the trust in his gaze. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried a profound message, that even in the face of misunderstanding and fear, love, patience, and clear guidance could provide safety and clarity. She squeezed his hand gently, a silent reassurance that he was safe, that he was understood, and that he was loved. The park behind them settled into a calm evening, the shadows growing longer, the air cooler. Children continued to play, their laughter mixing with the soft hum of conversations. Parents kept a watchful eye, perhaps a little wiser now, aware that assumptions could harm, but understanding that calmness, truth, and empathy could restore balance. The boy had returned to his games, carrying the lessons of the day in his heart. The mother had fulfilled her role, demonstrating the power of patience and authority without aggression. And the woman who had acted out of fear had begun a journey of reflection, recognizing the importance of fairness and understanding in her own life. The evening closed in slowly, leaving behind a park filled with quiet lessons learned, moments of reflection, and the comforting knowledge that compassion and calm could prevail over fear and prejudice. The boy and his mother continued walking hand in hand, ready to leave the park behind but carrying its lessons forward into the rest of their lives. They had faced misunderstanding and bias together, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than before. The evening settled over the neighborhood with a calm, golden light, the kind that makes everything feel soft and safe. The boy and his mother had left the park behind, walking slowly along the sidewalk as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Though the earlier tension had faded, its lessons lingered. The boy walked close to his mother, his small hand gripping hers tightly, a silent connection that reminded them both that they were safe, supported, and understood. As they walked, the mother reflected on the day. She had witnessed the power of calm authority, of patience, and of teaching through example rather than confrontation. The incident with the woman who had called the police had been unnerving at first, but it became an opportunity for understanding and growth. She knew that the boy would carry these lessons with him, learning to navigate situations with confidence and empathy. The boy, still processing the events in his own way, asked questions quietly. "Mom, why did she think I was in trouble?" he asked, his voice soft but curious. The mother smiled gently, crouching down so that she could look him in the eyes. "Sometimes people let fear or assumptions guide them," she said. "They see something they don't understand and make the wrong decision. That's why it's important to stay calm, be truthful, and treat others with fairness. You did nothing wrong and you are safe. That is what matters most." The boy nodded slowly, understanding the comfort of her words even if the complexities of bias were still beyond him. They reached their home, a cozy place with warm lights glowing through the windows. The boy let go of his mother's hand as they stepped inside, running to his room to put down his backpack and start a new game. The mother followed more slowly, watching him with pride. He laughed as he played, the events of the day no longer threatening, but instead forming a story of safety, resilience, and protection. The mother knew that this incident would remain in the community's memory. Parents who had witnessed the confrontation would share their impressions, the story spreading quietly through conversations. Some would speak of the dangers of making assumptions, others about the calm authority the mother had shown. She felt satisfied knowing that a moment that could have escalated into conflict had instead become a teaching moment, a quiet example of fairness, compassion, and understanding. Later that evening, the woman who had called the police sat at home, replaying the events in her mind. She felt a mix of embarrassment and reflection, understanding how her actions had affected an innocent child. For the first time, she considered her own biases and the consequences of acting without full knowledge. She realized the importance of pausing, observing, and approaching situations with empathy and fairness. The encounter had humbled her, and though it was uncomfortable, she recognized it as a necessary lesson. She began thinking about how she could respond differently in the future, how she could learn from this and prevent repeating the mistake. The boy's mother, meanwhile, had dinner ready, the warm smells filling the kitchen as she prepared for the evening routine. She felt a quiet satisfaction in the ordinary moments, knowing that even in the midst of fear and misunderstanding, the love and care she provided could restore calm and safety. She reflected on the power of small gestures, calm words, and attentive presence, realizing that these were often more impactful than confrontation or anger. The boy joined her at the table, still animated but now feeling safe and understood. He shared stories of his friends and the games they had played, his laughter light and genuine. The mother listened attentively, asking gentle questions and offering guidance when needed. The room was filled with warmth, a quiet contrast to the tension earlier in the day. She knew that this environment of safety and understanding would teach him lessons that extended far beyond the park, shaping his approach to life and relationships. After dinner, the boy's mother helped him with his homework, guiding him patiently, encouraging curiosity and focus. She made sure to include moments of reflection, helping him understand that while fear and prejudice exist, there are ways to navigate them with confidence, fairness, and empathy. She emphasized that he should always speak truthfully, act kindly, and trust those who care for him. These lessons were subtle but powerful, laying the foundation for resilience and integrity. The night continued peacefully. The boy prepared for bed, brushing his teeth and organizing his school supplies for the next day. He felt secure in his surroundings, comforted by the knowledge that his mother would always be there to guide him. She tucked him into bed, holding him close for a moment, whispering reassurances and words of love. "You are safe, you are loved, and you are strong," she said softly. "Remember that always." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words, the warmth of her embrace, and the protection it provided. As the boy drifted off to sleep, the mother reflected quietly on the events of the day. She had turned fear into understanding, confrontation into teaching, and misunderstanding into an opportunity for growth. She felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that she had guided her son through a difficult situation with patience and compassion, modeling the kind of behavior she hoped he would carry forward. In the community, the incident began to resonate quietly. Parents and neighbors discussed the importance of careful observation, fairness, and empathy. They noted how quickly assumptions could escalate and how calm authority could resolve tension. The boy's mother had become a subtle example of how to handle challenging situations, her actions speaking louder than any words of criticism or blame could have. Her influence spread beyond her immediate family, inspiring reflection and awareness in those who witnessed the events. The woman who had made the call had returned home, thinking about the lessons learned and the ways in which she could change her approach in the future. She reflected on the power of humility and the importance of examining one's own assumptions. The day had been uncomfortable, but it had also been transformative. She realized that mistakes were opportunities for growth, and that acknowledging bias and fear was the first step toward making better choices. As the night grew deeper, the neighborhood settled into quiet calm. The park was empty now, the echoes of children's laughter fading into memory. Families were home, reflecting on their own lives and the small lessons of the day. The boy's mother sat quietly in her living room, a cup of tea in hand, reflecting on the events. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that the day had ended safely, that her son had learned valuable lessons and that she had modeled strength, calm, and understanding. The boy, asleep in his bed, dreamed of running and playing freely, his heart light and unburdened. The events of the day were now stories to remember, lessons embedded in his growing understanding of the world. He had experienced fear and confusion, but he had also felt protection, love, and guidance. These were the moments that would shape him, teaching him resilience, empathy, and the importance of fairness. The mother stayed awake a little longer, thinking about the broader lessons for the community. She knew that people would talk about the incident, reflect on their own assumptions, and perhaps approach future situations with more care and awareness. She had seen firsthand how fear could distort reality, and how calm, thoughtful action could restore it. She felt a quiet hope that the lessons of the day would ripple outward, influencing others in subtle but meaningful ways. By the time she went to bed, the house was quiet and safe. The boy slept soundly, the mother rested with a sense of fulfillment, and the neighborhood settled into a peaceful night. The events of the day had been challenging, but they had also been instructive. Lessons had been learned, understanding had been gained, and connections had been strengthened. As sleep took her, the mother felt a sense of quiet contentment. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but she also knew that the strength, love, and guidance she provided to her son would continue to protect and guide him. The day had been a reminder of the importance of fairness, empathy, and calm authority, lessons that would endure far beyond a single afternoon in the park. In the morning, the boy would wake refreshed, ready to face the world with the knowledge that he was loved and safe, and with the understanding that calm, thoughtful actions could overcome fear and misunderstanding. The mother had taught him these lessons not through harsh words, but through presence, patience, and care. The ripple of this teaching would extend beyond their home, influencing those around them and reminding the community that even small moments could carry powerful lessons in humanity, courage, and understanding.